Hi everybody, it is Seth with Blue Collar Gaming, hanging out at home during this coronavirus shutdown period. And I thought while I had some free time, I would make a little deck tech video for y'all for one of my favorite decks to play. Got to play it this weekend, and it reminded me how much I really enjoy this deck. And especially now that this card, the commander for this deck, is being reprinted in the mystery boosters, I feel like this is a good time to bring him up, talk about him a little bit, and some of the things that we can do. And that deck is Rhys the Redeemed. He is a green or a white 1/1, so great turn 1 first blood commander. Pay 2 and a green or a white to tap him. Put a 1/1 green-white elf warrior creature token into play. And I actually have one of those tokens if you want to see what that looks like. And here's the token that he makes, the little white-green 1/1. But then he also has this fun secondary ability, pay a 2 white or green and 4, so that's 6 mana in total. Tapping for each creature token you control, put a token into play that's a copy of that creature. Wow. So we're going to double the number of tokens that are on the battlefield under my control. Now, when I brought this out the other day, one of the people in the pod that I was playing said, "Oh no, not Elf Ball." And no, I don't actually run this as Elf Ball. Yes, there are 1 or 2 elves in here, but it is not just straight, tribal elf. So let's see what we can do with this guy. So the way that I run Rhys is I run him as token life gain, and he can make an obscene amount of life. I mean, I have gotten it up into the 6 digits before, so he can get out of hand very quickly if you're not careful. So I've got the deck broken down into a couple of different parts. So just to kind of, this I feel like I can glaze over really fast. So here's just the mana base for it. I typically run anywhere between 35 and 38 lands. I have this pretty much split between white and green, so we're seeing a little bit of everything. And I also have several of the dual colored lands. And also some of these special lands at the beginning of your upkeep. If you control 7 or more planes, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. That's a good one just to bring some things back. Reliquary Tower, Bountiful Promenade, Jungle Basin, taps for 2 mana. I will just drop that there. So, Evolving Wilds, Command Tower. So nothing really super special here. Just the strict mana base. Here's a nice Temple Garden. So I can use, again, got that dual land going on. Stirring Wildwood. Fortified Village. Now, I am rather proud of this Canopy Vista. In case you are wondering, yes, this deck is double-sleeved. It is probably one of my more expensive decks that I run, just with fun cards like this in here. Also, Mosswarp Bridge, Hideaway. You may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost if creatures you control have a total of power of 10 or greater. And yes, that can get there. So again, nothing special with the mana base there, so we'll just put those right there. So let's talk tokens. How are we going to make tokens in this deck? So I've got a bunch of different fun token generators in a variety of mana costs. So let's take a look at some of these. White Sun Zenith, 3 white and X, put X number of white cat creature tokens onto the battlefield. Then you get to shuffle this back into your deck, so you can or your library, so you can actually go back and get it again. So really like that as a token generator. We also have Finale of Glory. Create X 2/2 white soldier creature tokens with vigilance, if X is 10 or more, also create X 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance. Wow. And that is from the recent War of the Sparks set. We have March of the Multitudes, Convoke, so you can actually use your tokens that you're generating to help cast this spell. And for every creature you tap, it creates 1 mana. So create X 1/1 white soldier creature tokens with lifelink. So there's a little bit of life gain going in right there. Seeing a lot of X spells, and that's okay. And so here is actually a special land that I do run in here from Thrones of Eldraine. Comes in tapped unless you control planes. This is Castle Ardenvale. Pay 2 and 2 white to create a 1/1 white human creature token. So if anything, nothing else going on in the hand, you can use Castle Ardenvale to make a token. Nomads Assembly. This is a fun one here. Put a 1/1 white core soldier creature token onto the battlefield for each creature you control. So for every creature, you got 10 creatures, then we're going to make 10 core soldiers. But it also has rebound. So when you cast this spell from your hand, as it's resolving, you get to exile it, and then at the beginning of your next upkeep, you may cast it for free. So you get the initial cast, it resolves, this goes away, and then at the beginning of your next upkeep, it comes back and it gives you more core soldier tokens. So very nice with that. Here is a kind of a creature that generates tokens himself, and that's Darien, King of Keljor. I like to call him Darien King. He is a 6-drop 3/3. Whenever you're dealt damage, you may put that many 1/1 white soldier creature tokens into play. Wow. So I've got Darien out on the battlefield. Somebody tries to swing at me for 5. I'm just going to take it because then I'm going to get 5 Darien triggers to get more tokens. Here's another X spell that is also doubles as a protection spell for me, a little board wipe, and that's Martial Coup. 2 white and an X, create X 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. If X is 5 or more, destroy other creatures. Destroy all other creatures. So that gives me a chance if some of my opponents are getting out of control with their board states, then I can wipe the slate clean and still have some tokens on board to do things with. Here is a nice non-white token generator. Avenger of Zendikar comes into play. Put a 0/1 green plant creature token onto the battlefield for each land I control, and then whenever I play a land, put a 1/1 counter on each of those tokens. So that's a great way to get some small tokens that get a lot bigger. Also, we have Hornet Queen. Now, I added Hornet Queen in here because 1, she's a flyer. 2, she has Death Touch. And 3, when she comes in, she's going to make 4 1/1 green insect creature tokens with flying and Death Touch. So that gives me some flyers on board in case some of my opponents have flyers in their decks. And because they're 1/1s and they have Death Touch and flying, I can chump block and take out any of their big things. Micah Cloth, this is an interesting card. He has Devour, so he's a 4/4. Oops, hit the camera there. 4/4 with Devour 2. As it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice any number of creatures. This creature then enters the battlefield with twice that many 1/1 counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a 1/1 green sapling creature token onto the battlefield for each 1/1 counter on Micah Cloth. So if I sack 5 tokens, when this comes in, it gets 10 1/1 counters. So it goes from being a 4/4 to a 14/14. That is massive. And then at the beginning of each of my upkeeps, I will then get 10 1/1 green sapling creature tokens onto the battlefield. Wow. So he's just a little sapling generator. So he is a good addition to this token deck. We also have Storm Herd. This is a big spell. I mean, 10 mana to make some tokens, but look how many tokens you get though. Put X 1/1 white Pegasus creature tokens with flying. So these bad boys are going to be flying 1/1s, where X is your life total. So if you have not been hit and you've got 40 life, you're going to make 40 tokens. That is well worth the cost. And with all the life gain that we've got in this deck, oh my goodness, we're going to generate a lot of tokens. A great turn 1 token maker coming at us from Modern Horizons, we've got Crashing Footfalls. So turn 1, play a forest, tap it, play this for suspend 4. Rather than cast this card from hand, pay a green and exile it with 4 time counters. Then at the beginning of your upkeep, remove a time counter. When the last one is removed, cast it without paying its mana cost, and you get 2 4/4 green rhino creature tokens with trample. So if we can start using Rhys to double our number of tokens, and we start getting double, so 2, create 2 more. So now we've got 4, then create 4 more. We've got 8 of 4/4s with trample. That is massive. From another commander set, I believe this came from the first mono red commander deck that was in 2014, 2015. We've got Wormcoil Engine, Death Touch, Lifelink. So he's a good protector, going to gain you some life, but also like that when he dies, it makes a 3/3 colorless worm artifact creature token with Death Touch and a 3/3 colorless worm artifact creature token with Lifelink. So it dies, we get the 2 tokens, and then again, using the Rhys ability to make more of those tokens. And then we've just got a little army of worms. And then I've got two more token generating cards that are non-creature, non-spell. The first one, Elspeth the Knight-Errant, kind of appropriate given that we just had the Theros Beyond Death release, and Elspeth came back. So this is little Elspeth, little L. +1, put a 1/1 soldier creature token onto the battlefield. +1, target creature gets +3/+3 and gains flying. What? And then -8, you get an emblem with artifacts, creatures, enchantments, and lands you control are indestructible. So going to protect all those artifacts and creatures, enchantments. This is an enchantment heavy deck, I will say. So making those indestructible and making your lands indestructible, that's just fantastic. And then the last one is Big L, Elspeth, Sun's Champion. Nice foily holding the Godsend there. She is a 6-drop, 2 white and 4. +1, put 3 1/1 soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield. That's why I call her Big L, and the other one, Little L, is the number of tokens they make. -3, destroy all creatures with power 4 or greater. So there's a little good board wipe built into her for you. And also her -7. You get an emblem with creatures you control, get +2/+2 and flying. So if we can buff the creatures, give them flying, make them harder to block, that's going to do a lot of big things. So these are all your token generators here for this deck. So we've got some good cards there. We'll just put those over here. All right, so we also talked about how this deck is also going to gain us some life. So let's talk about how we're going to gain life in this deck. The first couple of cards that I want to mention, so I don't know if everybody is familiar with the term the Soul Sisters. So we have 2 1-drops here, Soul Warden and Soul Attendant. So these are great turn 1-drops. They're only 1 mana of a piece. They're 1/1s. Whenever another creature comes into play, you gain 1 life, and that is on both of those. Whenever a creature comes into play, you gain 1 life. Whenever a creature comes into play, gain 1 life. So that's not just your board, because with all the tokens that these cards are going to make, you're going to gain lots of life off of those. But this is also off of your opponent's boards as well. So not only do we have the Soul Sisters, but we've got their sister from another mister, if you will, Essence Warden. Now, she is an elf. I did mention that there were a couple of elves in this deck, but she basically does the same thing as the Soul Sisters here. She's just in green, though. Whenever another creature comes into play, you gain 1 life. And then again, look at that, 1 drop. So you could easily get any of these 3 cards here out turn 1 and then start gaining all of that life. Also want to mention Suture Priest is another great way to gain life. Now, this one is only limiting to your board, though, but we are going to do something with your opponents, though, with this card. So let's take a look. 2-drop, a white and a colorless. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you're going to gain a life. But when a creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, that player is going to lose a life. So Suture Priest giving you a little help, draining your opponents for 1 whenever they have a creature come into play. So that's pretty good. To help make the deck be a little more aggressive, we've got Linden, the Steadfast Queen, the human noble from Thrones of Eldraine. She has Vigilance. And whenever a white creature you control attacks, gain 1 life. So we've got a lot of white creatures in here, a lot of white tokens. So she's going to gain you life whenever those creatures attack. What else do we have here? We have another special land here, Blighted Steppe. So pay 3 and a white, sack it, and you gain 2 life for each creature you control. This would be good to do right before a big board wipe if you want to gain some life before those creatures go away. We do have an enchantment here that will help you gain life. Now, this is one of the ley lines, ley line of vitality. And what's nice about the ley lines is all of them have, if it's in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield. Creatures you control get +0/+1, so they get a nice little defense boost. And then whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, gain 1 life. So doing very similar to the Suture Priest and the Soul Sisters, gaining you life for your creatures, but like the Suture Priest, doesn't do anything for creatures coming in control under your opponent's control. So what else do we have here? We have Orbs Prayer, which is another enchantment. If a creature attacks you, gain 1 life for each attacking creature. So again, using that Darien King example where a creature attacks me for 5, I'm going to take it. They're going. If it's 5 individual creatures, I'm going to gain 1 life for each of those creatures. And then I'm going to make a bunch of tokens. And then if I have any of the life gainers here, I'm going to net a bunch of life from Darien King making tokens. So in the end, I'm probably going to end up with more life than what I started with. So that's kind of fun. What else do we have here? We also have, let's talk a little bit about Archangel of Thune, flying in lifelink. Now I have this in the life gainer area because whenever you gain life, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. So she's going to gain you life with the lifelink, but then as you gain life, you're going to buff all of your creatures. That's pretty awesome right there. Let's revisit Elspeth, because there's one more Elspeth that works fantastic in this deck, and that's Elspeth Tyrael. Pay 2 and 3 colorless for Elspeth Tyrael. Her +2, gain 1 life for each creature you control. So again, you have a bunch of tokens out, you're going to gain a lot of life. -2, she's going to create 3 white soldier tokens. And then -5, destroy all other permanents except for lands and tokens. So you could wipe your opponents out, leaving just your tokens in play, and then you can just start swinging. So that is a great card there. Now, I can't really talk about Elspeth without mentioning one of her friends, and that is Mr. Ajani. And this deck runs all the Ajanis. No, it doesn't have the red-white one in there because that would be illegal, but we do run a lot of Ajanis. I like to say that this is tribal Ajani. So first we have Ajani the Wise Counselor. Much like Elspeth Tyrael here, gain 1 life for each creature you control. Creatures you control get +2/+2 until end of turn, and then -9. Put X 1/1 counters on target creature where X is your life total. So you get the buff based off of your life total. That's fantastic. And the neat thing about this card, M19, this was actually a Planeswalker deck card. So fantastic value for a Planeswalker deck card. We also have Ajani Strength of the Pride. You gain life equal to the number of creatures plus the number of planeswalkers from M20. -2, create a 2/2 white soldier token named Ajani's Pride Mate. Whenever you gain life, put a 1/1 counter on Ajani's Pride Mate. And the 0. This was what kind of intrigued me about this card. If you have at least 15 more than your starting life total, exile Ajani Strength of the Pride and each artifact and creature your opponents control. So he will gain you life, but is also a nice board wipe. Then we have Ajani Goldmane, one of the original Ajanis, I believe. +1, you gain 2 life. -1, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. Those creatures gain vigilance until end of turn. And -6, put a white avatar creature token onto the battlefield with this creature's power and toughness is equal to your life. So if you got a bunch of life, you're going to have a huge avatar creature token. Ajani Mentor of Heroes. Distribute +1, distribute 3 1/1 counters among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures you control. +1, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal an aura creature or planeswalker card from among them and put it into your hand. So a great way to cycle through your cards. And then that -8, gain 100 life. Wow. And then also from War of the Spark, we have Ajani the Great-Hearted. Gives that blanket, creatures you control have vigilance, +1 to gain 3 life, -2, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control with a loyalty counter on each other planeswalker you control. So a good way to buff your other planeswalkers. So how else are we going to gain life? So one of the cards that I added in here, Panharmonicon from Kaladesh. If an artifact or creature entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So looking back at Soul Warden, Soul's Attendants, Essence Warden, Suture Priest, an ability is being triggered, we're going to trigger that twice. So we're going to gain twice that much life. And then in addition to that, we also have Ahamuret's Archive. Love this card in this deck. If you would gain life, you gain twice that much life. So if we have 1 token entering and we've got Soul's Attendant out, it's going to trigger twice. So we're going to gain 2 life off of Soul's Attendant. And then if you're going to gain life, gain twice that. So now we're gaining 4 life with these cards. So 1 creature entering, there's 4 life. But wait, there's more. We also have Rock's Faith Mender, life link. If you would gain life, gain twice that much. So now we're going from 1, 2, 4 to 8. And then on top of that, we also have, now I know this is a foreign language card, but this is called Boon Reflection. And it basically does the same thing. Whenever you gain life, you're going to gain twice that much life. So 1 creature entering, we're going to gain life. We're going to gain twice that much. We're going to gain. So from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8, and we're going to do it twice. So we're going to gain 16 life for one creature entering the battlefield. Good grief. That's going to generate lots of life. So that's all of your life gaining cards right here. So we'll just put those out right there. What else do we have? Let's talk about making those creatures bigger. So we've got some ways that we can do that. First up is another special land, Reef, the Vastwood. Tap it to put a 1/1 counter on each green creature that entered the battlefield this turn. So that's going to buff your green creatures. From War of the Spark, we have Pledge of Unity. Put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. Then you're going to gain life for each creature you control. So that's doing double duty right there. Then we've got some good... more Ajani Planeswalkers. We have Ajani, Caller of the Pride. Put a 1/1 counter on up to one target creature. Target creature gains flying and double strike until end of turn. And -8, put X 2/2 white cat creature tokens onto the battlefield where X is your life total. So again, doing double duty, buffing creatures, and then making a bunch of creature tokens. We have Ajani, the Valiant Protector. Put 2 1/1 counters on up to one target creature for the +2. +1, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Put that card into your hand and the rest on the bottom. And then -11, put X 1/1 counters on target creature where X is your life total. So you notice we're doing a lot with our life total. And I should also mention that that creature also gets trampled until the end of turn. One more Johnny in here, and that's Adversary of Tyrants. +1, put a 1/1 counter on up to 2 target creatures. We're going to return a creature card with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And -7, you get an emblem with, at the beginning of your end step, create 3 1/1 cat creature tokens with lifelink. So going to gain those tokens. We also have the Good Fortune Unicorn from Modern Horizons. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on that creature. Now, speaking of the Good Fortune Unicorn, that kind of reminds me of this next card. It's basically a Carthar's Crusade. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. So again, with the tokens entering the battlefield, that's a lot of ETB triggers. And then just a nice overall buff to get things going. We've got Elish Norn in here. Vigilance going to give all of my creatures +2/+2, and then we're also going to zap my opponent's creatures for -2/-2. So good ways to get creatures buffed. Oh, I did leave one off. You'll have to ignore my dog Sasha barking in the background. And that's Shauna Sisay's Legacy. Can't be the target of abilities your opponents control. And then she gets +1/+1 for each creature you control. So she comes in as a 0/0, but as long as you've got enough creatures, you can make her scary big. All right, so there's all of our buffs. Now let's talk about, since we've talked about tokens and life gain, how else are we going to generate more tokens? So first and foremost, best token buff or generator here, Doubling Season. If an effect would create one or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many tokens. But the thing that makes Doubling Season so good is if an effect would put one or more counters on a permanent you control, it puts twice that many instead. So it's going to double the buffs, and it's also going to double the tokens. And then similarly, we also are running in here Anointed Procession and Parallel Lives. Basically does the same as the first part of Doubling Season. It's just going to double the number of tokens that I'm creating. Now, we also have in here Divine Visitation. Now, this isn't going to double your tokens, but instead of putting the token that you're going to put into the battlefield, instead we're going to make a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying and vigilance. So instead of the soldiers or the elf warriors or the cat tokens, we're going to make angel tokens, and they're going to fly, and they're going to be 4/4s. And like I said, this deck runs a lot of enchantments. So what happens if an enchantment you need gets removed? Here comes another special land from Modern Horizon, Hall of Heliod's Generosity. Taps for a colorless mana. We're going to pay 1 and a white to tap it. Put target enchantment card from your graveyard on top of your library, so you can bring things back, bring these enchantments back from your graveyard and put them onto your library to be able to draw them the next turn. Let's talk also, now that we've talked a little bit about making tokens, we've talked about gaining life, we've talked about buffing our creatures, let's talk about card draw, because any good deck needs a little bit of card draw. So I've got a couple of things in here to help us with card draw. First, again, some specialty lands, Scattered Groves, pay 2 to cycle it. So we're going to discard this card and draw a card. Same with Slippery Karst, pay 2 to discard this card and draw a card. And then we also have Tranquil Thicket. This is a green to discard a card and draw a card. But then also we have Skull Clamp for those 1/1 tokens to be able to equip it to draw 2 cards when that creature dies. And then the biggest card draw engine that we have in this deck, another Planeswalker, Hualti Radiant Champion, +1, put a loyalty counter on her for each creature you control. So that's going to be a ton. And then we're going to then pay attention to the -8 here. You get an emblem with whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. Keyword may, because if you're going to generate 100 tokens, you don't want to draw 100 cards. So you may draw a card for the token coming into the battlefield. All right, so there's our card draw. Now, let's also talk a little bit about mana generation. We do have some of our regular run-of-the-mill mana generators. Commander Staple, Soul Ring, that's in here. Also have Commander Sphere, because that gives us mana, and also we can sack it to draw a card. But big special land here, Mana Confluence, pay 1 life, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. This is a good card for this deck, mainly because we're going to be generating so much mana that the 1 life is not going to, it's going to be trivial. It won't really matter. Same with Ancient Tomb. Tap it to add 2 colorless, and it deals 2 damage to you. Again, generating enough mana that it's not going to matter. Or generating enough life that it's not going to matter. We also have our Mana Crypt in here. Tap it, 0 cost, tap it to add 2 colorless. Flip a coin. If you lose the flip, it deals 3 damage. Again, all the life gain in here, that little bit of a ping isn't going to hurt. We also have Cryptolith Rite. Creatures you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. We're going to have a lot of creatures. Might as well make some use of them if we're not swinging. Same with Phyrexian Altar, sack a creature, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. We're going to have so many creatures in this on the field that this gives us something to do with them. Also, okay, so 2 more cards for mana generation. First one is Growing Rites of Itlimoc. Whenever Growing Rites enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them, put it into your hand, put it on the rest on the bottom. But here's the big thing. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 4 more creatures, transform Growing Rites. What does Growing Rites transform into? It is basically a Gaia's Cradle. Itlimoc, Cradle of the Sun. We can tap it to add a green to your mana pool, or tap it to add a green to your mana pool for each creature you control. So that's going to generate a lot of green mana for us. So that is an outstanding addition, because we're going to have so many creatures that this will make us a buttload of mana. And then on top of that, we also have Azores Gateway. Pay 1, tap it, draw a card, exile a card from your hand. I'm not a big fan of that part, but the payout on this, though, is so worth it. Exile a card from your hand. If cards with 5 or more different converted mana costs are exiled with Azores Gateway, gain 5 life, untap it, and transform it. And what does it transform into? Well, let's take a look. It's going to transform into the Sanctum of the Sun. To tap it, to add X mana of any one color to your mana pool, where X is your life total. So if you've got 100 life, it's going to make 100 manas. If you've got 1,000 life, it's going to make 1,000 manas. And it's going to be in the color of your choice. So if you're missing a particular mana, or if you're short on green, short on white, this will make that mana for you. So fantastic addition here to this deck. All right, 2 more categories to take a look at. First is, how are we going to protect ourselves? Because, generating all this life, generating all these creatures, people aren't going to be happy. What are we going to do to protect ourselves? Well, first, let's take a look at asceticism. Creatures you control can't be the targets of spells or abilities your opponents control. So this gives all of your creatures hexproof, pretty much. And then we can also regenerate some of our mainstay creatures, our life gainers, for paying 1 and a green. We also, let's see, what else do we have? If some artifacts or enchantments from our opponents are giving us a hard time, we have Force of Vigor, so we can destroy up to 2 target artifacts and or enchantments. And then also, I've just recently added this in. I'm looking forward to seeing how it functions in this deck. Aura Shards. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. So with all those tokens coming in, we can pretty much keep our opponent's boards clear of enchantments and artifacts. So that is a good addition, I believe. If for whatever reason we end up defenseless, we have Winds of Abandon. We can exile a creature I don't control, and then basically it gives your opponent a basic land card. But for that overload cost, we can exile all the creatures all of the opponent's control. So that's a good way to keep things clear. We also have Dolem Gate. Prevent all combat damage that will be dealt to attacking creatures you control. So this allows us to kind of swing without worrying about losing all of our tokens. So that's a good way to protect our guys. If we get just straight swung at, don't have any protectors, we've got Druids Deliverance. Prevent all combat damage this turn that would be dealt to me or to the owner of this card. And then Populate, so create a token that's a copy of a creature you control. And then 2 other cards that I have in here, straight board wipes. First are Hour of Revelation. If there are 10 or more 9-land permanents onto the battlefield, this card costs 3 less. Destroy all 9-land permanents. So, with all the tokens we're going to make, we can just cast this for the 3 white. And then lastly, we have Fumigate, destroy all creatures. You gain 1 life for each creature destroyed this way. So it's going to clear out your board state, but it's going to give you life for that. And then finally, I've got a couple of small win cons in here, other than the overwhelming stampede of the tokens, the life that we're going to gain that people aren't going to be able to chip away at. First, underutilized land, I feel like. I don't see it used a lot. Rogue's Passage. We make one of our tokens super huge and then pay for target creature can't be blocked this turn. So that's a good way to take out an opponent with just straight damage, or if we can buff Rhys enough, we'll have commander damage on board. We also have God Eternal Ronus, Death Touch. When it enters the battlefield, double the power of each of those creatures you control. They gain Vigilance. So good way to buff all the creatures. We get them big enough, and then just start swinging when Ronus comes out. And then when he dies, exile him from the battlefield, put him in its owner's library, third from the top. So if he dies, he will come back shortly. And then probably the funniest win condition in this deck, I call it the shotgun, Aether Flux Reservoir. We're going to be gaining so much life that as soon as you play this card, you can just go around and sweep the entire board. And unless they've got an immediate response for it, it's done. It's over. You win. The life gain on this, I feel like, is inconsequential. Whenever you cast a spell, gain 1 life for each spell you've cast this turn. But then that 50 life, though. Pay 50 life. Aether Flux Reservoir deals 50 damage to target creature or player. Again, just going to machine gun the entire pot. So this is it. This is my token life gain deck, or token love as I like to call it. Let me know what you think. This is my first time doing a deck tech video like this. What'd you like? What didn't you like? What can we do to improve it? Give this video a comment, give us a like, give us a subscribe. I hope everybody is surviving this this quarantine for coronavirus, and you're finding ways to still play Magic, the game we all know and love. In the meantime, this is Seth for Blue Collar Gaming. Y'all keep gaming. See ya.